I found a secret bank account funding my wife's second wedding in Europe. It sounds like something out of a bad movie, right? A plot twist nobody sees coming. Except in this case, it was my life, and the popcorn was definitely stale. Look, before we dive too deep into this mess, if you're finding yourself drawn into stories like this, where the rug just gets pulled out from under someone, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It really helps out the channel. And while you're at it, give this a like if it's hitting you in the gut, share it with anyone you think might understand, and leave a comment. I need to know I'm not the only one who's ever felt completely blindsided. My name is Mark. I'm 42. Lived in Cincinnati my whole life. Grew up in Oakley, went to McNicholas, played football, got a decent job in logistics at a manufacturing plant just outside of town. Nothing glamorous, but steady, paid the bills. Allowed for decent vacations, the kind where you can actually relax and not worry about the credit card bill. My life before I found the account, was pretty much mapped out, comfortable, predictable. Maybe a little too predictable, now that I think about it. I met Sarah at a mutual friend's barbecue in Mason. It was a sweltering July evening, the kind where the cicadas buzz so loud it feels like the air itself is vibrating. She was new to town. Her company had transferred her from Chicago for some marketing gig. She was electric. Her laugh cut through the drone of the insects bright and easy. She had this way of looking at you, like you were the only person in the room. And for a guy who'd been dating casually for a few years, feeling a little stuck in the post-college rut, it was intoxicating. We dated for a year, a whirlwind of late-night talks exploring the city's surprisingly good food scene, weekend trips up to Hocking Hills. She was ambitious, sharp, and had this fire in her that I found incredibly attractive. She talked about starting her own business one day, about traveling the world. I was more of a homebody, content with my routine, but she pulled me out of my shell, made me feel more. We got married at Immaculate Conception in Price Hill. It was a beautiful ceremony, just like you'd imagine. White dress, flowers, the whole 9 yards. My parents were thrilled. Her friends flew in from all over. We had the reception at a banquet hall downtown, the one with the stained glass windows. It was perfect. The start of our happily ever after. For a while, it really felt like it. We bought a house in Hyde Park. It was older, a bit of a fixer-upper, but it had character. Big backyard, perfect for the golden retriever we eventually got, Buster. Sarah's career took off. She was climbing the corporate ladder fast, and I was proud of her, really proud. I'd cook dinner, pour her a glass of wine, listen to her talk about her latest successes, her frustrations, her dreams. She was my rock, my confidant. We were a team. The first hint that something was off wasn't dramatic. No shouting matches, no slammed doors. It was small, insignificant really at the time. We were doing our taxes. It's always a bit of a chore, sitting down with all the paperwork, the receipts, trying to make sense of it all. Sarah's always been the more organized one. She usually handles the bulk of it, but this year she was swamped with a major project at work, so I took it on. I'd logged into our joint online banking portal 1,000 times. Every transaction, every bill paid, every deposit, it was all there, routine. But this time, as I was cross-referencing statements, I noticed a recurring withdrawal, a pretty significant one, every month, like clockwork. I couldn't place it. It wasn't our mortgage, wasn't a car payment, wasn't a credit card bill we usually paid off. It wasn't a large chunk of our savings account either. It was separate, a distinct outflow that didn't fit any of our known expenses. I remember pausing, my finger hovering over the mouse. I zoomed in on the transaction description. It was vague, just a string of numbers and letters like a wire transfer reference. No company name, no pay, just a code. My gut tightened, just a little. I dismissed it. Maybe it was some old investment account we'd forgotten about, or a subscription service that had auto-renewed without us realizing. Sarah had a lot of subscriptions. It was probably nothing, but it nagged at me, like a pebble in my shoe. The next day, I was at work, staring at spreadsheets, the numbers blurring, and my mind kept drifting back to that transaction. I remembered Sarah mentioning she was managing some of her personal investments through a different platform, something she'd set up before we were married. Maybe it was related to that. I decided to ask her about it casually that evening. "Hey, honey," I said, putting down my coffee mug as she walked in, shedding her walk back by the door. Buster immediately greeted her with frantic tail wags and slobbery kisses. I was looking at her finances for taxes and I noticed this recurring withdrawal. Do you remember what that's for? She paused, her hand on Buster's head, and gave me a quick, almost dismissive smile. "Oh, that. It's probably just some old investment thing, Mark. Don't worry about it. I'll sort it out." Her response was so offhand. Usually Sarah was meticulous about finances, even the little things. She'd remember everything. And "I'll sort it out" sounded like a polite brush-off. A tiny red flag fluttered in the back of my mind, but I pushed it down. She was tired. She'd had a long day. I was probably overthinking it. Days turned into weeks. The tax deadline passed and I'd mostly forgotten about the mysterious withdrawal. Life in Cincinnati rolled on. We went to a Reds game,
had dinner with my folks, celebrated Sarah's promotion. Buster chased squirrels in the backyard. It was normal, good, even. Then came the trip. It was our 5th anniversary. Sarah had been hinting at something special for months. She'd been more stressed than usual at work, working late nights, and I'd been trying to be extra supportive, making sure she had a calm, peaceful home to come back to. She deserved a break. She deserved something amazing. She'd booked us a week in Maui, 5-star resort, oceanfront bungalow, the works. I was blown away. Sarah had never been extravagant with money, not usually. We were comfortable, yes, but this was next level. I asked her if she was sure, if it was okay with our budget. She just waved her hand. Don't worry about it, Mark. It's our anniversary. We've earned it. Besides, I've been saving up for something special. I loved her for it. It felt like a reward for all the hard work, for building this life together. The trip was incredible. Sunsets over the Pacific, fresh pineapple at every meal, the smell of plumeria in the air. We renewed our vows on the beach, just the 2 of us, the waves crashing at our feet. It felt like we were falling in love all over again. When we got back, reality hit, as it always does. Bills to be paid, work to be caught up on, the familiar rhythm of our lives. But something had shifted, subtly. Sarah seemed more distant, not in a way that screamed trouble, but in a way that made me feel like there was a thin pane of glass between us. She was polite, affectionate even, but the deep, unguarded connection we'd shared seemed to be fading.
She was on her phone more, often in hushed tones, disappearing into the other room to take calls. When I'd ask who it was, she'd say work or just a friend. Standard answers. But the feeling of unease started to creep back in. One Saturday morning, I woke up before Sarah. The house was quiet, bathed in the soft, diffused light of an overcast Ohio sky. I padded downstairs to make coffee, and that familiar itch returned. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was the lingering scent of expensive resort toiletries, a subtle reminder of the extravagance that felt out of sync with our usual prudent spending. Maybe it was the memory of her vague answer about the withdrawal. Whatever it was, I found myself drawn to her home office. She kept her personal financial documents in a locked filing cabinet. I'd never had a reason to open it before. It felt like a violation, a breach of trust, even just to look. But my hands were shaking as I knelt down and tried the small brass key she kept hidden in a ceramic pot on her desk. It turned. Inside, it was mostly what I expected. Old tax returns, insurance policies, some investment statements. But tucked away in the back of a drawer, beneath a stack of old photo albums, was a manila envelope. No label. My heart started pounding. It felt heavy, important. I sat on the floor, the envelope in my lap, the smell of old paper filling my nostrils. I hesitated for a long moment, wrestling with my conscience, with the image of Sarah I held so dear. Then, I opened it. Inside were more bank statements. Not from our joint accounts, not from any account I recognized. These were from a bank I'd never heard of, a European bank with a name that looked complicated and foreign, and the account holder wasn't Sarah. It was her maiden name. And the transactions were staggering. There were regular deposits, significant sums, coming in from an account that was also listed with a foreign name. And then there were the withdrawals. Huge, consistent withdrawals, with descriptions that were chillingly specific. I scanned through them, my blood turning to ice. Venue deposit, Villa del Balbianello. Caterer fees, Lake Como. Wedding planner retainer, Tuscany. Gown alterations, Milan. My breath hitched. Venue deposit, caterer fees, wedding planner, Tuscany, Milan. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the impossible. It was like a punch to the gut, a cold, heavy weight settling in my chest. My hands started to tremble uncontrollably. I flipped through more pages, the foreign currency symbols blurring before my eyes. There were dates that corresponded to our anniversary trip, dates that were in the very near future. And then I saw it, a photograph tucked between 2 statements. It was Sarah. She was smiling, radiant, wearing an elegant white dress. Her hair was up, adorned with a delicate veil. And standing next to her, his arm around her waist, was a man I'd never seen before. He was handsome, tan, with dark, intense eyes. He looked adoring. He looked like he was looking at his bride. My world tilted. The quiet house, the overcast sky, the familiar scent of coffee, it all felt alien. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just some forgotten investment. It wasn't a harmless side project. This was something else entirely, something that shattered everything I thought I knew. I traced the lines of the photograph, my fingers shaking. Sarah, my Sarah,
not just attending a wedding, not just a guest. She was the bride. And it wasn't a wedding from our past. The dates on the statements, the planning details, this was happening now, or it was about to happen. The account was active, the money was flowing for a wedding in Europe. And I was here in Cincinnati, making coffee, paying our bills, while my wife was apparently planning a second wedding, a secret wedding funded by a secret account with another man. The sheer audacity, the calculated deception, the profound betrayal, it washed over me in a tidal wave of nausea and disbelief. My vision blurred, tears welling up, hot and stinging. I looked around the room, at the framed photos of us on the mantelpiece, and Buster sleeping peacefully on his rug. It was all a lie, every single bit of it. The life we'd built, the love I'd felt, the future we'd planned, it was all built on a foundation of sand, and the tide had just come in, revealing the utter emptiness beneath. I sat there, on the floor of my own home, holding evidence of my wife's double life, the photograph of her smiling at another man like he was her everything. The air felt thick, suffocating. I heard the floorboards creak upstairs. Sarah was awake, coming downstairs, and I didn't know if I could even look at her. The secret bank account, the European wedding, the other man, it was all laid bare before me, a monstrous tableau of deceit. And she was about to walk into the room, expecting the same old life, the same old Mark. But that Mark was gone, and I didn't know who I was now, or what I was supposed to do next. The silence in the house was deafening, punctuated only by the frantic pounding of my own heart. The floorboards creaked again, closer this time. My breath hitched. I shoved the envelope in the photograph back into the drawer, shoving it shut with a little too much force. A stack of old magazines tumbled from a shelf. My stomach clenched. I could hear her moving around in the kitchen now, the clink of mugs, the soft hum of the refrigerator. Normal sounds, sounds that felt like a cruel joke. I pushed myself up, my legs stiff, my mind a chaotic whirlwind of images. The villa in Italy, the handsome stranger, Sarah's radiant smile. It felt surreal, like I was watching a movie of my life, but one where I'd been cast as the unknowing, pathetic fool. I splashed cold water on my face in the downstairs bathroom, the harsh fluorescent light doing nothing to calm the tremors running through me. My reflection stared back, a stranger with hollow eyes and a face contorted by shock. I looked like I'd seen a ghost, or worse, like I'd just realized the ghost had been living in my house all along. I walked into the kitchen, forcing a neutral expression onto my face, a mask I prayed would hold. Sarah was standing at the counter, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. Buster padded over to me, his tail giving a tentative thumb against my leg. I knelt down, burying my face in his soft fur, trying to anchor myself to something real, something honest. "Morning, sleepyhead," she said, her voice light, casual, too casual. She turned, a mug in each hand, and then she saw me. Her smile faltered, just for a split second. I noticed it. I noticed everything now. "Everything okay?" she asked, her eyes scanning my face. She was always good at reading me, at knowing when something was wrong. That used to be a comfort. Now it felt like a weapon. I took a mug from her, my hand brushing hers. It felt cold. "Yeah, fine," I managed, my voice rough. "Just had a weird dream." She nodded, taking a sip of her coffee. "Anything I should know about?" she asked, her tone still light, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Apprehension, guilt. It was hard to tell. "No," I lied, my gut twisting. "Just, nonsense." I sat down at the kitchen island, the familiar wooden surface feeling foreign under my hands. I stared at the dark liquid in my mug, unable to drink.
The weight of the secret, the sheer enormity of it, was crushing me. Every shared laugh, every whispered "I love you," every comfortable silence we'd ever had felt tainted, corrupted. "And so," she said, sitting opposite me, "what do you want to do today? The weather's supposed to be decent. We could take Waster to the park, or maybe catch that new movie?" Her suggestions, her attempts at normalcy, were like tiny daggers. How could she? How could she sit there, making plans for our Saturday, knowing what she was hiding? Knowing she was actively building a future with someone else in another country, while I was here, oblivious, playing my part in her elaborate charade. "I don't know," I said, my voice flat. "I'm not really feeling it." She frowned. "You feeling all right, Mark? You seem a little off." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her by the shoulders and shake her, demand an explanation, but the words wouldn't come. They were trapped somewhere in my chest, a tangled knot of pain and fury. "Just tired," I mumbled, looking away. I couldn't meet her eyes. Not yet. Not when every instinct was screaming at me to run, to flee, to put as much distance between us as possible. The rest of the day was a blur of forced pleasantries and strained silence. I pretended to read the newspaper, but the words swam on the page. Sarah went through the motions of her day, tidying the house, chatting on the phone, in hushed tones from another room, of course. Buster, sensing the tension, stayed close to my side, his big brown eyes looking up at me with concern. That evening, after dinner, a meal I barely touched, Sarah suggested we watch a movie. I agreed, just to have something to occupy the time, something to distract me from the screaming internal monologue. We settled on the couch, Buster curled up between us. She leaned her head on my shoulder, a familiar gesture that now felt like a betrayal. I stiffened. She pulled away slightly, a questioning look on her face. "Everything okay?" she asked again, her voice softer this time. This was it. The moment. I couldn't pretend anymore. The facade was crumbling, and I knew it. The alternative, living a lie, pretending I didn't know, was unbearable. It would have been a slow, agonizing death of everything I believed in. I took a deep, shaky breath. "Sarah," I started, my voice barely a whisper, "we need to talk." She sat up, her body tensing. The casual warmth evaporated from her eyes, replaced by that same apprehension I'd seen earlier, only now it was amplified, mixed with a dawning fear. About what? I couldn't look at her. I stared straight ahead at the blank television screen. About the account. The one in Europe. The one with the withdrawals for weddings, for villas, for planners. The silence that followed was deafening. The only sound was Buster's soft breathing and the distant hum of traffic from Hyde Park Avenue. Sarah didn't move. She didn't say a word. It was as if I'd spoken in a language she didn't understand, or perhaps a language she desperately wished she didn't understand. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke. Her voice was a low, tight whisper, barely audible. How did you find that?" "It doesn't matter how I found it," I said, my own voice gaining a shaky strength. "What matters is what it means. Sarah, what is going on?" I turned to face her, my eyes locked on hers, searching for any sign of honesty, any flicker of the woman I thought I knew. Her face was pale, her lips trembled. She looked cornered, trapped, and in that moment I saw it. Not just fear, but resignation. The game was up. "Mark," she began, her voice cracking. I can explain." "Can you?" I challenged, my voice rising slightly. The calm facade was gone, replaced by raw, unadulterated pain. "Can you explain why my wife is funding a wedding in Italy for herself with another man?" The words spilled out, sharp and jagged. She flinched as if I'd struck her. Tears welled up in her eyes, tracing paths down her pale cheeks. It's complicated." "Complicated?" I scoffed, a harsh, humorless sound. "What part is complicated, Sarah? The part where you are getting married again, or the part where you lied to me every single day for God knows how long?" She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a shuddering breath. When she opened them, they were red-rimmed and brimming with unshed tears. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never wanted you to find out like this." "How were you planning on telling me, Sarah?" I demanded, the anger finally breaking through the shock. "After you'd already said I do to him, after you'd moved to Tuscany and started your new life, leaving me here with Buster and our mortgage and the ghosts of our marriage." She shook her head vehemently, tears now flowing freely. "No, Mark, no, that's not it at all." She reached out a hand as if to touch me, but I recoiled. The thought of her touch, her warmth, now felt like a violation. "Then what is it, Sarah?" I pleaded, my voice breaking. "What is this? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been living a double life, a secret life, and I was just a convenient prop in your real story." She squeezed her eyes shut again, pressing her palms to her temples. I met someone," she whispered, the confession hanging heavy in the air, "a few months ago when I was in Milan for that conference. His name is Giovanni." Giovanni, the name from the statements, the man in the photograph, the man whose arm was around her waist. My jaw clenched. "Giovanni," I repeated, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. "And you're in love with him?" She nodded, a sob escaping her. "Yes. Oh, Mark, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I fought it, I really did. But
It just sort of happened. It just sort of happened, I repeated, incredulous. You're planning a wedding, Sarah. A whole damn wedding in Italy. That doesn't just sort of happen. That takes planning. That takes commitment. That takes leaving your husband. I know, she choked out. And I haven't finalized anything. I haven't told him I'm married. Not really. Not the full truth. I stared at her, my mind reeling. This was worse than I could have imagined. Not just a fling, but a full-blown, meticulously planned second marriage. And she was telling me she hadn't even told him she was married. That was a new layer of deception. You haven't told him you're married? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. So what, you just told him you're single? And you've been letting him believe that while you're living with me, sharing my bed, eating at my table? She started to cry harder, her body racked with sobs. I didn't know how to tell him. It was all happening so fast. He's wonderful, Mark. He makes me feel things I haven't felt in years. He's passionate. He's exciting. He's everything I thought I wanted. Everything you thought you wanted, I repeated, the words laced with bitterness. What about what we wanted? What about the vows we took? The life we built? That life, she said, her voice thick with tears. It felt safe, comfortable, but it wasn't enough anymore. I felt like I was suffocating. And then I met Giovanni, and it was like a breath of fresh air. It was like waking up. Waking up. My voice rose to a shout. This isn't a dream, Sarah. You're destroying me.
You're destroying everything we had. Buster whined and nudged my hand, sensing my distress. I ignored him, my gaze fixed on Sarah, who was now hunched over, sobbing uncontrollably. I'm so sorry, Mark, she wept. So sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I got lost. I made a terrible mistake. A mistake? I stood up abruptly, pacing the small kitchen. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. A mistake is taking the wrong exit on the highway. This isn't a mistake, Sarah. This is a choice, a series of choices. And you chose to betray me. You chose to lie to me. You chose to build a future with someone else. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. What do you want me to do, Mark? I'll stop it. I'll cancel everything. I'll leave him. I'll do anything. But the words felt hollow. The trust was gone, shattered, irreparably broken. How could I ever believe anything she said again? How could I look at her without seeing the deception, the planning, the other man? Leave him? I asked, my voice cold. You think it's that simple? You think you can just undo this? You've spent months planning this. You've spent thousands of dollars. You've let another man believe he's marrying you. I can fix it, she insisted, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I can call the wedding planner. I can go to Milan and tell him. I can do whatever it takes. I walked over to the window, looking out at the dark street, at the familiar houses of Hyde Park that now felt like a mockery. Our house, our life, a carefully constructed illusion. I don't even know who you are anymore, Sarah, I said, my voice barely audible. The woman I married, she wouldn't do this. She wouldn't lie like this. She wouldn't build a secret life. She wouldn't plan a wedding with another man. She stood up, her legs wobbly. She took a step towards me, her hands outstretched. Mark, please, we can get through this. We can go to counseling. We can try to fix this. I turned around, my eyes meeting hers. The raw pain and confusion were evident on my face. Fix this? Sarah, you're already married to me. You're planning to marry another man. How do you fix that? How do you unbetray someone? She stopped, her hands falling to her sides. The desperate hope in her eyes flickered and died, replaced by a profound sadness. I don't know, she whispered. And in that moment, staring at the woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, I felt a chilling emptiness spread through me. The anger, the confusion, the hurt, it was all there, a roiling tempest within me. But beneath it all, there was a cold, terrifying realization. This wasn't just about a mistake or a fling. This was about a fundamental choice she had made, a choice that had irreparably altered the course of our lives. I looked at Buster, who was now sitting at my feet, his tail giving a low, questioning thump. He was the only innocent party in this house, the only creature whose love was pure and uncomplicated. I knelt down and buried my face in his fur, inhaling his familiar, comforting scent. "I can't," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "I can't fix this. Not right now. I don't know if it can be fixed at all." Sarah let out a small, broken sob. She didn't argue, didn't plead. She just stood there, a defeated figure in the center of our kitchen, the scene of so many shared meals and quiet evenings, now a battleground of shattered trust. I stood up, my resolve hardening. I had to get out. I had to think. I had to breathe air that wasn't thick with her lies. "I'm going for a drive," I said, my voice flat, devoid of any emotion. "Don't follow me. Just don't." I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door, not bothering to put on a jacket, even though the air was cool. Buster whined at my feet, looking at me with worried eyes. I gave him a quick pat on the head, a silent apology for the chaos that had descended upon his home. As I opened the front door, I glanced back at Sarah. She was standing there, a solitary figure, silhouetted against the warm kitchen light, her face a mask of despair. It was a tableau I knew would be burned into my memory forever. The image of the woman I loved, the woman who was apparently about to marry another man, standing alone in the wreckage of our life. Stepping out into the night, the cool air a shock against my skin. I didn't have a destination in mind. All I knew was that I had to get away. Away from the house, away from the questions, away from the unbearable weight of her betrayal. The streetlights cast long shadows, distorting the familiar suburban landscape into something unfamiliar, something unsettling. Cincinnati, the city I'd called home my entire life, suddenly felt like a foreign land. And the path forward, it was as dark and unknown as the winding roads ahead of me. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm against the suffocating silence of my own thoughts. Was this it? Was this the end of everything? And if it was, what the hell was I supposed to do now? The engine roared to life, a visceral growl that matched the turmoil churning inside me. I didn't bother with the GPS, didn't even consciously steer. My hands gripped the wheel like a lifeline, knuckles white, as I navigated the dark tree-lined streets of Hyde Park, the familiar landmarks blurring into a kaleidoscope of despair. Each street sign was a cruel reminder of the life I thought we had, the life that was apparently just a meticulously crafted illusion. The houses, so ordinary in the daylight, now seemed to loom like silent judges, witnessing the implosion of my world. I drove and I drove, the radio off, the only soundtrack the pounding of my own blood in my ears, the frantic drumbeat of a heart that had just been ripped out and stomped on. Hours later, the city lights had faded, replaced by the inky blackness of a rural highway. The fuel gauge was hovering near empty, a stark reminder that even this escape had its limits. I pulled over at a deserted gas station, the neon sign a garish splash of color in the suffocating darkness. The air was cold, biting, carrying the scent of damp earth and something wild. I stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching loudly under my worn sneakers. The silence here was different from the strained quiet of my home. It was vast, ancient, indifferent. It was almost peaceful. I fumbled with the gas cap, my fingers stiff and clumsy. As the pump sputtered and whirred, I leaned against the cold metal of my car, staring up at a sky choked with stars. They seemed so distant, so unaffected by the messy, pathetic drama unfolding on this tiny speck of a planet. I thought about Sarah, about Giovanni, about the wedding in Tuscany. The image of her radiant smile, the one from the photo, flashed in my mind, but now it was tainted, distorted by the knowledge of her betrayal. It wasn't the smile of a woman in love. It was the smile of a woman playing a part I had willingly, blindly, cast her in. A wave of nausea washed over me, a physical manifestation of the disgust and self-loathing that was consuming me. How could I have been so blind, so stupid? I had always prided myself on being observant, on being able to read people. But with Sarah, my judgment had been clouded by years of comfort, of routine, of the assumption that our life, so seemingly solid, was inviolable.
I had let my guard down, had taken her for granted, had believed in the fairy tales so completely that I had missed the cracks, the fissures, the slow, insidious rift. The image of Buster came to me then, his big, sad eyes, his bewildered whines. He was waiting for me, my loyal, furry shadow, oblivious to the tectonic shift that had just occurred in his world. The thought of his confusion, his distress, twisted my gut. He didn't deserve this. None of us did. But we were the ones left to pick up the pieces. I paid for the gas inside the empty convenience store, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the smell of stale coffee and disinfectant filling the air. The cashier, a young man with tired eyes and a bored expression, barely glanced at me. He was just doing his job, a cog in the vast machinery of late-night commerce, utterly unconcerned with the existential crisis unfolding within my skull. I bought a pack of cigarettes, something I hadn't done in years, the urge to numb the pain, to find some fleeting distraction, overwhelming. The first drag was harsh, burning my throat, but it was a physical sensation, a welcome distraction from the emotional inferno. Back in the car, the stars still spread above, mocking my insignificance. I thought about the advice people usually give in situations like this. Talk to her. Try to work it out. You deserve better. Platitudes, all of them. They were designed for a world where trust could be easily repaired, where hearts could be mended with a few well-chosen words. But this felt different. This felt like a fundamental violation, a betrayal so deep that it had severed the very threads that bound us. I pulled out my phone, the screen a harsh blue light in the darkness. I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering over Sarah's name. What could I possibly say? So, about that wedding in Tuscany? The thought was absurd. There were no words that could bridge this chasm. There was no going back to the comfortable ignorance of yesterday. That Mark, the one who believed in their happy ending, was gone, replaced by this hollowed-out stranger staring back from the rearview mirror. I thought about Giovanni. Who was he? What was it about him that had captivated Sarah so completely? Was it his passion, his excitement, the thrill of the forbidden? I imagined him, somewhere in Italy, oblivious to the storm he had indirectly unleashed, waiting for his bride. The idea of Sarah, my Sarah, walking down an aisle towards another man, professing vows of love and fidelity, it was a physical pain. My chest tightened, my breath catching in my throat. I put the phone down, the urge to lash out, to confront, to demand answers, warring with the suffocating sense of helplessness. What good would it do? She had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. The sun began to paint the horizon with hues of orange and pink as I drove, the desolate highway gradually giving way to the outskirts of a small, nondescript town. I needed to think, to process. I needed to dismantle the wreckage and see if there was anything salvageable, anything worth rebuilding. I pulled into a diner, the kind with vinyl booths and a perpetually grumpy waitress who seemed to have seen it all. I ordered black coffee and a plate of scrambled eggs, the grease on the plate mirroring the greasy weight in my stomach. As I ate, my mind replayed the night before, dissecting every word, every gesture, every look. The fear in her eyes, the shame, the desperate attempt to explain away the inexplicable. It all pointed to one undeniable truth. She had fallen out of love with me, and in love with someone else. It wasn't a sudden, impulsive act. It was a gradual drift, a slow erosion of connection that I had been too complacent, too comfortable to notice. I had been so focused on the stability of our life, on the comfort of our routine, that I had forgotten to nurture the spark, the passion, the things that had drawn us together in the first place. I had become predictable, safe, perhaps even a little boring. And Giovanni, this Italian stranger, had offered her an escape from that predictability, a taste of the passion she craved. The eggs tasted like cardboard, the coffee like bitter ashes. I felt a profound sense of loss, not just for Sarah, but for the Mark who had existed before this revelation, the Mark who believed in happily ever after, the Mark who thought he knew his wife. That man was dead, buried somewhere along with the dreams we had shared. I paid the bill and walked back out into the bright morning sun, the world buzzing with activity, oblivious to my internal devastation. I got into my car, the familiar interior now feeling alien, a space that had once been filled with shared conversations and comfortable silences, now echoing with her lies. The drive back felt different. It wasn't an escape anymore. It was a return to the scene of the crime. I had to face it. I had to face her. Not to beg, not to plead, but to understand. To understand what had happened, why it had happened, and what it meant for the future. As I pulled into my driveway, Buster was there, waiting by the front door, his tail giving a tentative wag. He ran to me, his whole body wiggling with relief and joy. I knelt down, burying my face in his fur, drawing strength from his uncomplicated love. He didn't judge, he didn't question, he just loved.
It was a balm to my wounded soul. Sarah was in the living room, sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the television. The morning light cast long shadows across the room, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. She looked exhausted, her eyes puffy and red, her face pale and drawn. She looked like someone who had been through a war, and in a way, we both had. She looked up as I entered, her expression a mixture of apprehension and weary resignation. There were no more tears, no more protests. The dam had broken, the storm had passed, leaving behind a desolate landscape. "You're back," she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Yeah," I replied, my voice rough. I walked over and sat down in the armchair opposite her, Buster settling down at my feet, his head resting on my thigh. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy, a testament to the years of unspoken truths that had finally erupted. "So," I began, my voice steady, surprisingly calm. "Tuscany, huh?" She flinched, but didn't look away. It was a dream, Mark. A stupid, selfish dream. A dream that involved a wedding, I stated, not as an accusation, but as a simple fact. A wedding with another man. She nodded, a single tear escaping and tracing a path down her cheek. "Yes. And you were just going to let me find out afterward? Or not at all?" "I don't know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't think that far ahead. I was just caught up in it, in him, in the idea of it. The idea of escaping this," I gestured around the room, "at our home, our life. Escaping me? Not escaping you, Mark," she said, her voice gaining a touch of its old warmth, a flicker of the woman I had loved. Escaping this, the routine, the predictability, the feeling that I was just going through the motions. "And Giovanni was the one who made you feel alive?" I asked, the words laced with a bitterness I couldn't entirely suppress. "He made me feel seen," she confessed, her gaze fixed on some point beyond me. "He made me feel desired."
He reminded me of who he used to be, before life got complicated. Complicated by marriage? By shared responsibilities? By love, Sarah? The last word was a question, a desperate plea for clarification. She finally looked at me, her eyes filled with a profound sadness. "I thought I loved you, Mark. I did. But I don't think I've loved you in a long time. Not in the way you deserve to be loved." Her words landed like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. It was honest, brutal, and devastating. There was no more anger, no more confusion, just a deep, aching emptiness. The truth, stripped bare of all pretense, was more painful than any lie. "So, what now?" I asked, my voice a mere whisper. She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring. "I don't know, Mark. I honestly don't know." The silence returned, heavier than before. This wasn't a fight that could be won or a problem that could be solved. This was an ending, a painful, necessary, absolute ending. I stood up, Buster following suit, nudging my hand. "I'm going to take Buster for a walk," I said, my voice flat. I think I need some space. A lot of space." She nodded, unable to meet my eyes. As I walked towards the door, I glanced back at her. She was still sitting on the couch, a solitary figure in the quiet room, her face etched with grief and regret. She was a stranger now, a woman I had shared my life with, but who had chosen a different path, a different story. Stepping out into the crisp autumn air with Buster trotting happily beside me, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The confusion, the anger, the hurt, they were still there, a dull ache in my chest. But beneath them, something new was beginning to emerge, a quiet determination. I had lost a marriage, but I hadn't lost myself. The man who had walked into that house yesterday, believing in a happy ending, was gone. But the man walking out of it now, bruised and broken but still standing, was ready to start figuring out what came next. The road ahead was uncertain, dark, and terrifyingly empty. But for the first time in days, I felt like I was finally walking it on my own 2 feet. The weight of the betrayal was immense, a crushing burden, but the first tentative steps forward felt like a breath of fresh, if cold, air. This was the end, but it was also, in its own brutal way, a beginning.